Hey, everybody, it is time for Freeology. I'm Derrick Day, and he is.
I'm Aaron Tomlinson.
And we're starting a little early today because Aaron's got something else he has to do that's something special and exciting. And if you want to tell everybody about it, Aaron, please feel free. But before we get to that, what's in your glass tonight?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm doing some red wine tonight. This is a first for us. We're coming on early.
Yeah, no.
Well, how about you? What you got?
You know what? People often like to call me a POS, so I've got POS today, plain old scotch.
That's cool.
So that's my story.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I'm jumping on another show. It's called Soul School with Jeff Turner uh, at 6 o'clock my time, and I have to be there a few minutes early. So I appreciate you accommodating that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. But yeah, so I'll tell you what, man, this has been, the month of May has been a month of Mondays for me. Uh, and if you can imagine what the worst possible Monday you could possibly think of is ratchet that down like about two notches, right? In other words, it's not quite the worst Monday you've ever had, but goddamn, it's right up there. It's right up there.
A whole month, man.
A whole month, man. I mean, it's like the month of May is almost over, and it's been like nonstop Mondays. Um, but I'm gonna remedy that. It is now officially, you know, warm weather season here in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go out tomorrow and instead of normally I ride around the Tesla on the weekends, but I'm gonna clean up the BMW. I'm gonna let the top down and I'm gonna ride around a lot.
Nice.
So
Nice.
oh, and then I'm gonna go to the hairdresser and get my locks tuned up. So when I do my Sunday morning show, I'll be looking all pretty and everything.
You got a good weekend planned.
I had a good weekend planned. Plus, it's a Memorial Day weekend,
Yep.
so it's a long weekend. But I want to remember the fallen in our country, because they say all gave some, but some gave all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think about all the people. And I'm going to start with a little anecdote, real quick, if you indulge me this. Um,
Absolutely.
but I had a friend in high school. His name was Anthony Brown, and he played defensive end. I want to say it was not Cody. It's the East Side School. Now I can't remember, but anyway, the hardest hit I ever took in football, I took it from him, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
after that, we became friends, and we joined the military about the same time. I went in the Navy. He went in the Marines. We were supposed to go in the Marines on the buddy program, but I kind of bitched out on the Marines at the last minute. And kind of looking back, maybe in the Beirut barracks bombing in October of '83, I lost Tony and two other friends from high school.
Wow.
you know and so Memorial Day holds a very special place in my heart because I remember these guys, and remember them from high school. And then Tony actually deployed with me once aboard the USS Nassau.
Hmm.
He was in a Marine recon group, and so that was the last time I saw him.
Wow.
So we got to hang out at some exotic places overseas and everything, which was cool. But it's like now he's gone, and I never. In 1983, we're talking about what is that? 40 years ago? God damn, that's 40 years ago.
Years ago.
And dude, I
Wow.
remember it like it was yesterday. I
Wow.
remember it like it was yesterday. And the anniversary of that just passed. Well, actually, the anniversary will be coming up in October. Um, but anyway, I just had to say that. But anyway, you have a fantastic subject, Aaron. So I want you to go ahead and tee it up, man, and let's get at it.
Yeah, I notice there's been a theme with me in my thought process lately, I guess. um, I think it was last week on this show we talked about transitions. Was that last week or was that the week before? I can't
That was
remember.
last weekend.
Yeah, we talked about transitions, and one of the points that I made in the show was how, pretty much up until you're in your mid-20s, life kind of has a track for you to run that has various destinations to it. So
Yep.
each year you graduate to another grade level, preschool through 12th or whatever. Maybe you go to college, maybe you go to a tech school or something, maybe you join the military or whatever. And then get married, buy a house, have kids, and then it just kind of stops. Like the destinations kind of stop at that point. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Or at least there's a long destination between having kids and maybe having grandkids or retirement, right?
Yeah.
And so we talked about challenging people to challenge themselves, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And so this week I was thinking about these destinations and how we can, there's so much in leadership books, self-help books, on the internet, on YouTube and social media platforms that people have that talk about setting goals so that you have other destinations, right? So when I get this job, when I get this promotion, when I get a bigger house, when I buy a nicer car, whatever it is. And we tend to delay our happiness in this pursuit of destinations. And yet oftentimes we find that when we get to those destinations, maybe we're not as happy or as satisfied as we thought that was going to make us. And we start looking for the next destination. I don't know if you do this, Derrick, but I do this a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember being in a museum with my kids when they were younger, and they both have different paces. Like Elijah is lightning fast. Going to the zoo with him was like that Clint Eastwood movie. Can't remember which one it was, but he had to like get through the zoo with his kids really fast. So he was doing like speed zoo, and he was like
Yeah.
rushing them around. I don't know if anybody knows that scene. And that's Elijah. And Josiah, takes his time. And I remember Elijah was just bouncing from, one exhibit to the next, to the next, to the next. And I was just like, hey, slow down, take some time to enjoy what's in front of you before you go on to the next thing. And I heard that voice inside of me, whatever it is, whether it's our intuition or our higher self or whatever it is. But that voice that we used to call the voice of God,
Yeah.
the voice of the Spirit. But something just spoke up in my consciousness and said, Aaron, that's you. You're just like that with life.
Mm.
And that really struck a chord with me, to the point that I remember it today. And so I've endeavored to enjoy the journey, I guess.
Yeah.
And I heard a quote by Gertrude Stein, I think. In one of her books, she was going to visit her childhood home in Oakland, and it was a farmhouse, and it had been destroyed, and the farm land had been developed. And so she's writing in that context, but she says, there is no there.
Mm.
And that really struck me this week about if I could just get to the next destination, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And realizing when I get to the next destination, there is no there.
Yeah.
And so this kind of ties in with enjoying the present moment, ties in with enjoying the journey. And it certainly ties in with stuff that I've been talking about on Sunday mornings and stuff that we talked about last week. So that's how I'll set it up. And I'll
Yeah.
take it back to you.
Because you went really in depth on this on your Sunday show.
Yeah.
About making moments, right? And I think about this because when you make moments, you make milestones, right?
Mhm.
They're waypoints on your journey. But Kyle Butler said something that was really profound, and I have co-opted this and embraced this, and he called it campfire theology.
Mm.
In other words, you're traveling and you get to a point where it's time to stop and rest.
Mhm.
But what do? you set up camp, right? And what is
Mm.
one of the things you do? Like, camp is, firecraft, sheltercraft, foodcraft, right? So you're trying to get all of these things together to sustain life in this hostile environment. But what happens is we get addicted to the campfire
Mm.
and we say, man, this is a beautiful fire. This fire is warm. This fire is comforting. This fire makes me feel good. It gives me solace, rest unto your souls.
Yes.
And what happens is because we get addicted to that, we stop. And
Hmm.
so instead of pitching a tent, now we want to build a house.
Hmm.
Now we want a homestead around this fire because this fire represents something. It has become a thing unto itself, right?
Hmm.
And I found, I mean, when Kyle first said this, that was a major oh shit moment in my life
Hmm.
because I can't think of. I mean, I honestly can't remember how many campfires I pitched my life around.
Hmm.
And this is what I found is that there have been many sage philosophers, quotable people that have said that life is about the journey and not the destination.
Hmm.
And so if you are on a road trip driving from say New York City to Los Angeles, there are a lot of interesting places along the way,
Yeah.
right? Back in the day, we had Route 66, which passes right through where I live here in Oklahoma. And Route 66 was a tourist trap. I mean, it was like all these places to go and see things. And then they built the interstates. They built I-40 and I-10 and I-20 that go across country. And now that you don't really stop at anything. But the thing about Route 66 is that there were people that actually they started off on a journey from the East Coast to the West Coast, and they stopped somewhere in Oklahoma or Nebraska, and they say, okay, this is the spot. I don't need to go anyplace else. And so
Right.
they miss out on the actual, the destination. But here's the thing about this is that you said something really important here. And that's that when we are not in the moment, we miss out on life.
Hmm.
Life happens in the moment. Life doesn't happen in the rearview mirror. And it honestly, and this is something I have to kind of check myself on because I always talk about the difference between the windshield and the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get focused on the windshield.
Yeah.
But if you focus on the windshield and you're not in the cockpit, you're not behind the wheel, you're not at the controls, you're gonna crash,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the moment is where we're supposed to live. And so I'm like, I don't focus on let me give you an example. Yesterday, I got my Social Security statement in the mail.
Okay.
It was a happy moment for me because, you know, I'm gonna max out. I'm gonna get damn near the max benefit that Social Security has to pay out when I retire, and that
Yeah.
made me very happy because, when I have that and I have some other things, my retirement should be pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and it would be easy to say, okay, now it's time to just kind of let my foot off the brakes and just kind of coast downhill on this thing.
Yeah.
And you can't. You have to remain in control. You have to remain at the controls. You have to remain with your hands on the wheel, your foot on, but alternating between the gas and the brake. You have to remain in the moment because what happened? How many people have said, "Man, I'm looking forward to my retirement," and then they die,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you miss all of the moments because you're focused on what's downrange,
Yep.
right? Even this is where I'll stop and kick it back over to you because as a former sniper,
Hmm.
you're taught to look downrange. You're taught to observe your target, make the necessary compensations for your shot, But until you pull the trigger, that's the moment. Until you pull the trigger, nothing happens. So,
Right.
so the thing is that you don't want to get what happens, and this is like the analysis paralysis that a lot of shooters get into, is that they get so focused on the target that they forget about how to pull the trigger.
Mm,
They forget about the breathing exercises. They forget about the body relaxation and all of the things that go into a successful shot.
hmm
So you have to man there so the title of this is no destination, because when you get to the point where you understand there's no destination in life, that's when you begin to really enjoy things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I when I think about destinations in life, I'm thinking about, thermodynamics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so, especially with goal setting, we're taught to focus on the goal. For motivation, sometimes they tell you to focus on the reward that will come with the goal.
Yeah.
And but what they don't tell you is the equal and opposite reaction of new problems that you're going to have
Right.
when you get to the goal. And so we have a tendency to think about our destination, whatever it may be. Oh, when I get that, or when I get there, then will have arrived, right? I really
Yep.
will have be where I want to be. But when you get there, there's a whole new set of problems. So you get promoted, more than likely, you're going to have a whole new set of responsibilities.
Yep.
You may be managing people or managing more people than you've done before, and that brings its own headaches. There's no group of people I feel worse for in America than people, especially in the private sector, that are in middle management.
Yeah.
That has to be a level of Dante's hell. Uh,
I can attest. That's my life.
yeah, I always feel for you guys, because you got the bosses and the owners and maybe the stockholders and everything above you giving you these goals and putting this pressure on you, and you're answering to them. And then you have people that are answering to you. And I'm sure you've seen where there's a disconnect between the visionaries and the workers.
Yep.
And a lot of them end up like Pharaoh, right? We want you to make more bricks, but we're not going to give you the straw to do
Yep.
it.
More bricks, less straw.
So now you've got your people that you're responsible to, or that you're over supervising. At the end of the day, you're going to have days. You're going to have maybe a May of Mondays where everybody's pissed off at you.
Yep.
And so you want to talk about, sniper shooting or something. You find yourself in the line of fire with everybody.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, man, maybe this job wasn't all I thought it was going to be. Or if you're not a homeowner and you get your own home, now you've got, things breaking down, and you're solely responsible
Yep.
to make sure that they get fixed and to make sure that it's kept up. And maybe you move somewhere and you land in an HOA and they start raising your HOA funds. Or like here in Colorado, they assessed everyone's house value across the state. And so everybody's house value just shot up. So that means more taxes. That means more insurance.
Yep.
So there's headaches that come with all of that. You want new relationship. Oh, if I get in this relationship, it's going to be wonderful. And then you get two human beings together and there's conflict.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the reasons focusing on the destination, why we don't end up enjoying our lives, because at the end of the day, we don't really want to be where we're at for whatever reason. But usually that reason is because of the negativity that's coming at us because of where we're at. So then we start thinking, oh my God, well, if I can just do this next thing, then I'll get out of this, situation that I'm in that's causing me headaches and causing me problems. And so at the end of the day, life is full of challenges and problems, and good days and bad days, and blue Mondays and great Fridays. And that's just life. And I think, more motivational speakers maybe need to tell the truth about that,
Yeah.
because that's a cottage industry that tells you, if you'll follow my plan, my path, by my program, everything's going to get better for your life. When in reality, you're always going to have those issues. And so it's learning how to be present and not resist the present because you don't like it,
Yep.
so that you keep projecting yourself forward into the future, because in reality, you can't deal or cope with the fact that you don't like where you are. And so I think the key is realizing there is no destination, right?
Yep.
But also learning how to be content. I think contentment is the issue. Learning how to be content in your situation and realize that every problem has everything, not just problems, everything has an expiration date on it.
Yep.
So the good times, we try to cling to those. But the truth is, I'm going to sound very Buddhist here, but the truth is that that's going to come and go. And then the good news, I guess, on the other side is when we get so focused on the problems, that problem also has an expiration date.
Yeah.
And so it's learning to manage in the moment and be present and be where you are while you're still progressing. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with setting goals or progressing or moving forward or thinking about the future, keeping your eye, your gaze focused on the windshield and checking the rearview mirror every once in a while,
Yep.
or the side mirrors. But again, it just goes back to learning how to enjoy the journey. And I think maybe we need to tell people the truth about that more. Those of us that have had more experience maybe with setting goals and arriving at destinations. And sometimes I think we set the younger generation up to fail because we try to over motivate them. I remember I did a message, last thing I'll say, and I'll kick it back over to you, but I remember I did a message in my church once. It got me in real hot water with parents because I said, stop telling your kids that they can be anything they want to be. Because if you lack the physical prowess or the athletic ability or the opportunity, you can't be a professional athlete. Or if you have some intellectual challenges, maybe you can't be an engineer. Like we have to find out where our limits are.
Yep.
And then teach our children that there are limits, to recognize those limits, and then prosper where you can based on who you are, rather than saying, well, you can be anything you want to be. Just dream and you can accomplish it. Just believe it and it'll happen. I think we set people up for a mess.
Yeah.
And then what happens, last thing, Derrick, and then I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, man.
Then what happens is people compare their present life to the one they wanted in their mind, the one that was created for them in their mind. And oftentimes there's a disparity there and so we kind of do this mental game where we torture ourselves or we lose our happiness because I'm constantly comparing where I am, which isn't as good as I thought it was going to be, to the idea in my mind of where I thought I would be when I was here or where I want to go. And that just breeds unhappiness.
And you said something really key here is that, because I've heard this before. People say, "Oh, well, you could be anything you want to be," and honestly, I was watching a video about this kid who was like a basketball phenom.
Mm-hmm.
He was like 5 years old, and he could dribble two basketballs simultaneously. By the time he was 6 years old, he's crossing grown-ups and making them fall.
Wow.
He had a dead-eye three-point shot, all of these things. And so this video was about what happened to this guy, what happened to this kid. And so as it turns out, now he's like a professional trainer. He trains athletes because he was not as tall as other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in basketball, if you're 5'6", 5'7",
Right.
unless you're just really exceptional, you're not going to get the looks. And so this was a kid that he was working out 4 hours a day. His training regimen was a thing of legend, and yet he didn't arrive. But I love what the commentator who did the video said. He said, let's not look at his career as a failure, because he put in the work and he did it. He enjoyed what he was doing. It's just that not everybody has that thing to to succeed. For example, if you're not good at math, you are not going to succeed in, say, physics,
Right.
right? If you're not if you're not patient with people, you're not going to be a good teacher,
Right.
and so on and so forth. Everybody has different abilities, different gifts, and it's how those things are appropriated and manifest. That is what determines your success. But to your point, with motivational speakers and gurus and all of that, I think that they need to start breaking down life in a military sense.
Mm.
Because in the military, you have two things that you focus on. You have strategy, which is long-term planning,
Hmm.
right? What is the end game? What is the goal, the objective, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But then you have tactics. Tactics are the moment-to-moment actions that fulfill the strategy.
Mm. I like that.
And one of the things that I've learned, I used to say, well, I'm a chess player, so I think strategically, and I
Hmm.
and I've said that in our show,
Hmm.
and so now I'm replaying these times when I said this in my mind or on camera, and I'm
Hmm.
thinking to myself, I said, well, actually, I think I'm a pretty good tactician too,
Mm.
because I've learned to manage the moments,
Hmm.
right? And I think about this like when people talk about like doing things, what the difference between like giving your kids stuff
Hmm.
and doing things with them that make memories,
Right.
right? And so I look back on this and I said, man, uh, I think that I was good at giving my kids stuff, but I think I was even better about helping them make memories.
Mm.
Things that we did, like, we'll talk about the times we went to California or we went to Las Vegas or, that we went to Hawaii or whatever, right? And all of these things, these are things that the kids remember.
Hmm.
They've latched on to these things. So again, going back to motivational speaking, and I know like you and I, we talk about our desire to be able to coach people and help people to live better, more fruitful lives. And I think that really we start with ourselves, right? That we begin to not so much focus on the tactics, but balance the tactics with the strategy. Because again, the point of this discussion is we're saying there's no destination, and so the point of that is that one more anecdote, and then
Yeah.
I'll
No. No.
kick
It's
it back
fine.
over to
I'm
you.
enjoying it.
Is I think about Ben Affleck and Matt Damon,
Hmm.
right? Their story is kind of a Hollywood legend. Is these
Right.
two kids, they went from Boston to Hollywood in Ben Affleck's Volkswagen Bug, right? Car broke down several times on the way out there, and they get out there with the whole intent of pitching the screenplay that they wrote, which eventually became the movie Good Will Hunting,
Hmm.
right? And so Good Will Hunting was successful, was an Oscar-winning movie. It put Matt Damon and Ben Affleck permanently on the map
Yeah.
in Hollywood.
Yes.
But the thing is that if you look at these guys' careers and the trajectory of their careers, they haven't stopped. And they haven't stopped evolving. It's like Ben Affleck was fucking Batman.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You don't come out to Hollywood saying, I'm going to be a serious actor. And then you say, well, I'm going to be fucking Batman.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
he did it. And I think that, all things considered, he did it well. I think he was a better Batman than George Clooney, but that's, or Val Kilmer. but,
Yeah.
but
Not
I
everyone's seen it.
digress.
Hmm.
The point is that, he kept evolving.
Right.
Matt Damon kept evolving. These guys have done comedy, they've done drama, they've done, suspense and thriller and all of this other stuff. And so even when you arrive at your destination, my air quotes,
Yeah.
that you have to remember that the journey doesn't stop at the destination. Because let's say you go from New York to Los Angeles and you get to Los Angeles and you say, well, fuck, that was cool. But Los Angeles is full of really interesting stuff. The whole Los Angeles County and Orange County, San Bernardino, everything that's surrounding LA is really amazing. And you could get lost in that environment forever. You could spend a lifetime in Southern California and
Sure.
never see everything.
Right.
So the point is that even when you get to where you think that you want to be, you get the relationship that you want to be. If you get that relationship, remember that the same adventure that it took to get to the relationship, you're going to have to keep up that same sense of adventure to keep that relationship, right? You get that job, the same sense of adventure that took you to get this job, that same sense of adventure is going to be required for you to stay in that job. You're going to have to keep that enthusiasm, or as we like to say in the hood, you got to keep that energy, dog.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
that same energy. Because if you don't, what happens is that you'll get to your destination and you'll see it as an end point instead of a waypoint.
Hmm.
So with
Yeah.
that, I'm taking it back to you.
Yeah. The other thing that you can do, there's we talked, I think, one time about neurolinguistic programming,
Yeah.
NLP, and the founders of NLP created a set of presuppositions, is what they called them. And this one really changed my life. I was thankful I got it when I was younger. But one of the NLP presuppositions is there is no failure, only feedback.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, there is no failure, only feedback. And that kind of works in with this idea as well, with there is no destination, because how many people don't go for something because they're afraid of failing, or they're afraid of succeeding, or whatever. When you can think in terms of there is no failure, only feedback, what that means then is if I go out and try something new, or I set a goal and I don't reach that goal, then I have to if I don't see it as failure, which is tied to a destination, right?
Hmm.
If I can see that as feedback for me, like guaranteed, the young man that you were talking about that was a basketball prodigy,
Yep.
uh, guaranteed he had to learn that. There is no failure, only feedback. So I put my life into developing myself in this sport. I had the talent. I had the energy, like you just said. I had the discipline. I had the training. I just didn't have the height.
Yep.
So it could be this thing where your dream is just destroyed, or you take that as feedback and say, okay, I'm not tall enough to do this, but I know how to train. I know how to train athletes. I know how to play basketball. And so I'm going to take that feedback and I'm going to turn it into a different career that matches what I love, that matches my value system,
Yep.
if that makes sense. And so being free from having to go to a destination, being free from the there that's not there, I think really allows for that NLP presupposition to work. It's a different way of thinking about life. It's a different way of thinking about goals and achievement. It's a different way of thinking about success and failure that's a little bit more accurate to how life actually is. Another NLP presupposition that I love that was really powerful for me is the map is not the territory.
Yeah.
And by that, what they mean is that all that stuff we do in our heads, the thoughts and the feelings, and that link between mind and body, and thoughts and feelings and thoughts, we don't have to believe all that. That's because that's our map. That's our map through which we navigate life. And none of us actually navigate the territory independently of our maps. So just to throw out another one, this is a little bit off topic, but to throw out another one that I've noticed in working with people and coaching them and helping them through religious trauma, I don't know that I can think of anybody that I've worked with in religious trauma that didn't deal with a lot of guilt and didn't have a preset program inside of them to think that they were wrong about something. And the way this would work is no matter what decision they make in any given situation, no matter what decision they make, they're going to feel guilty about something. In any conflict that they step into, they're going to feel like they were the cause of it, or they at least participated somehow in the cause of it, right?
Yep.
So you could look at this like you've got, let's say you've got your children that you want to spend time with, and then you have a friend that you haven't seen in years, or that you've neglected that relationship, and you come to a crossroads. Very simple example. I can go spend a weekend with my friends or an evening out with my friends, but let's just say a weekend. The guys, the old buddies, high school buddies or whatever, are getting together and we're going to Vegas. And then at the same time, I had planned a camping trip or something with the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people with this set program, and this is what I mean by the map's not the territory, people with this set program, they can't enjoy either one. Because if they go with their family, they're going to feel guilty about not being a good friend and disappointing their friends and missing out on the relationships that they made the wrong choice. Or if they go with their buddies, they're going to spend the entire time feeling guilty because they moved or canceled the camping trip with the kids. I mean, that's totally a hypothetical situation, but I hope people kind of get what I mean when I say the map is not the territory. And so with these presuppositions, when we say there is no success and failure is just an idea that sticks in our mind. There is no destination. That's just an idea that sticks in our mind. And we can be aware of that. Then we can fine tune our map to more accurately represent reality. And so I think, there is no failure, only feedback is more accurate to the actual territory of life and how life works, rather than, watch this, I am a success because I did these things, or I am a failure because I set out to do these things and I didn't accomplish my goals. That's another map.
Yeah. And that's the map is not the territory is so powerful because I think about this like one of my cars it's a BMW, it's a used one, and it's older but it's not old yet, and it has a navigation system. It has a navigation system that's driven by DVDs. You have to put the DVDs in the navigation system in order for it to work. But they stopped making DVDs for BMW navigation systems in 2018. So the latest set that I have is a 2018 set. So when you say the map is not the territory, I can look at the map and I could drive by a destination, and I either drive by a destination that didn't exist before or no longer exists, because I'm looking at the map and actually not at the territory. And even the best navigation systems, they can't compensate or they can't adjust for real time. So if you're depending on the map for guidance, the map could easily deceive you because the terrain changes. Right. So we have to learn how to, I can't overemphasize mindfulness in this.
Right.
That you actually have to go out. How can I say this? Like success happens at the intersection of education and experience.
Yeah.
Right. It also happens at the intersection of opportunity and preparedness, but I'm gonna stick with the former and not the latter because of the discussion. If you are educated and you have the experience, you have the tools to succeed. But here's another thing about success is that success is simply a consistent string of overcoming failure. In other words, there is no success without failure.
Right.
In other words, you're going to make mistakes, but you have to, number one, give yourself the license to make the mistakes. You have to give yourself the agency to make the mistakes. Because if you don't, what'll happen is every time you make a mistake, every time you experience a setback, you are going to blame yourself, you're going to beat yourself up, you're going to
Yep.
berate yourself, and you will consistently be unhappy. And more to the point, what you'll do is you'll stop trying.
Right.
And you'll get in a rut and you'll say, well, there's no point in trying because I'm just going to fail anyway.
Right.
There's a guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. He's a motivational speaker. He's an entrepreneur and all of these things. And Gary is the son of Ukrainian immigrants. And how he got his start, his parents opened a liquor store. And he had this idea, I'm going to sell wine on the internet and use my parents' store as the base of operations for this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of online marketing can be modern online marketing can be traced back to Gary Vaynerchuk. He built this. The whole concept of selling wine and spirits online, he built that. Right? And so he's done that. He's built auction sites. He's developed software. He's been a motivational speaker. But do you know what this guy's driving passion is?
No idea.
He wants to own the fucking New York Jets.
Oh, wow.
Everything that he does is a step toward owning the Jets.
Wow. Well, they could probably use some new ownership.
They could use some new ownership. Well, I mean, like, hey, Aaron Rodgers, I don't know, man. I don't know. But anyway, here's the thing. That when you dedicate yourself to a specific thing, okay, give me another one. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, when you look at the Apple founding team of Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, Woz was the brains behind the operation. He was the guy, the technical guru. He was the engineer that said better product, better product. Steve Jobs he talked about the user experience. How does this interface with people?
Right.
And Apple, everybody thinks about the iPhone and they say, man, Apple is just a fucking success because of the iPhone. Nobody remembers the Apple Newton, the first PDA. And it sucked. And I know because I had one.
Yeah.
The Newton sucked. Another one was the Apple Lisa, which was before the GUI interface computer before the Mac. And I had one. And I know how badly it sucked.
Yeah.
But in spite of Apple's epic failures, and matter of fact, Steve Jobs got to the point where, they got to the point where they became a publicly traded company and the shareholders voted him out. They fired him.
I remember.
Kicked him off the chair as chairman of the board, kicked him off, fired him as CEO, and he left. And Apple completely lost its way. And so he founded a company called Next, and Next was putting out some really good product. It was horribly expensive. I didn't have one of those because I couldn't afford that. But what happened was Apple had to kiss Steve Jobs' ass and bring him back.
Wow.
Right? And here's the thing. What I say all this to say to everybody that's listening. Oh, and if you're watching on YouTube, please click the like and subscribe button and click the bell so you get the notifications. But what I'm saying to everybody is that you are not going to have any success. You're not going to have any success without failure. And you're not going to have any major success without some epic failures. You know, everybody remembers the successes that Evil Knievel had,
Mm,
but they don't remember the failures. They don't remember or they'll remember it, but it's not at the front of their mind. Where Evil Knievel crashed and broke damn near every bone in his body,
right.
jumping the
Yeah.
fountains at Caesar's Palace, or when he tried to jump the Snake River Canyon. The people don't remember that, but they remember Evil Knievel. Man, this guy could jump shit on his motorcycle. His son Robbie eclipsed every record that Evil Knievel ever did, but nobody speaks of Robbie Knievel.
True.
Everybody ask about a motorcycle stuntman, and even people that weren't born when Evil Knievel died will say Evil fucking Knievel.
Yeah.
In other words, and I'm going to tell you something. If you go back, there was a really great made-for-TV movie where George Hamilton played Evil Knievel. And I highly recommend that you go back and watch it, because Evil Knievel was a cat that lived in the moment.
Mm,
He lived in the moment. There was no destination. There was always something else to overcome. There was always something greater to be done.
sure.
And when you look at this, like Aaron, you and I, we talk about this all the time, because you have a career, I have a career. Neither one of us is particularly happy in our career.
Right.
So when we talk privately, we're always talking about, okay, what is the next thing that we can do? How can we help each other, overcome the limitations that we have now, and propel ourselves into something bigger? Well, that's because we're completely mindful. We're
Hmm.
completely in the moment. We're completely. I mean, and I say this because I'm talking about, I listen to you,
Hmm.
and so I know. But I also know that there are bigger and greater things. Why? Because we know that this is not a destination. This is
Right.
a waypoint. This is a marker. This is a milestone. It's not the end game, but it's something that's helping us track our path to the next destination. And it's or let me put it this way: the next waypoint, because it's not about destinations; it's about the journey. And then once you've explored everything and where you are, move north, move south, or explore around. There's always something. There's always a bigger challenge. There's always something else. Anyway,
Yeah. No, that's great stuff. Um, I love this story about Steve Jobs and Apple. And I noticed Daryl Carlson, one of his comments. I was just looking over some of the comments, and I noticed he said, "Those three suppositions give us a foundation to see that we need others with differing points of view, and we can figure out life together without blaming and attacking each other." So let's talk about how our focus on the destination can create some relationship conflict or relational conflict with other people that could be avoided altogether or managed better, for sure.
that's a great waypoint on the journey of this conversation, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I like what you did there. Um, uh, but I just love that comment from Daryl, because if we understand that everybody has a map, everybody's bringing in a different map, and we're trying to figure out the territory together, and everybody has something to contribute, or at least a different point of view. And if we could see them as points of view and maps rather than solid right, solid wrong, my way or the highway kind of thing.
Yeah.
Listen to our language, my way or the highway. I'm on a journey. I'm going to get there. And so what ends up happening in a lot of relationships, and the root of a lot of relational conflict, is that we have different ideas about what the destination is going to be.
Yep.
Or, to use your analogy with strategy versus tactics, we might have a similar strategy, but we might employ different tactics because we see the situation differently.
Yep.
And so maybe this is a little bit of what Napoleon Hill was talking about in his book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
When he talks about, the term escapes my mind. I tell you what, Derrick, I gotta I've been having a lot of senior moments lately. Um,
It only goes downhill from here on. Hey, I'm
that's scary.
not gonna give you
That's
any
a
hope or
scary thought.
anything.
That's a scary thought.
It's really pessimistic.
um, but the idea is, sorry, the idea is that we create a greater third mind, so to speak. So if there's two of us, like when we're talking and we're dialoguing about places we want to go, things we want to do in the future, as we each contribute our portion of the map, as we each contribute our viewpoints, as we each contribute strategy to the strategy or to the tactics, then a third thing emerges
Mm,
that wasn't before.
yeah.
Because it's not just my idea of what should happen and how it should happen. And it's not just your idea of what should happen and how it should happen. But when you bring those two things together, then you have a third mind that's smarter than both of you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's where synergy is. And that to me is what real conversation is. There's a difference to me between conversation and discussion, or conversation. Yeah, I would say it that way, between conversation and discussion. And how many times have you done it? How many times have I done it? Or how many times have you observed other people do it? Because it's easier to see when other people do it because of our point of view,
Mm-hmm.
where they just have to be right. And so there is no third mind that emerges, if you see what I'm saying. It's
Yep.
like, I've got my point of view is right, your point of view is wrong, and we just go back and forth at each other, and nobody's map is adjusted at all. That's discussion to me. We're having a discussion. But when there's real dialogue that's going on, then there's an exchange of logos, right? There's an exchange of mind. There's an exchange of logic. And then, like I said, something third can emerge. And just imagine if what could happen in this country if we could have real political dialogue.
Yep.
I mean, part of me longs for days. Used to be a conservative radio talk show host. I mean, part of me longs for the days when we can have solid conservatives, not because I agree with them, but they're willing to engage in actual dialogue. And you have people on the other side who are willing to engage in actual dialogue and then put our heads together to solve the problems that we face as a country and as a world with a more enriched map, because we're not clinging to our party's stance or our party's values,
Yep.
because it's about being right and it's about getting elected. It's not about real conversation and dialogue that can solve the problems with an expanded way of thinking. So kind of got way off of the destination. Well, no, not really, because the destination is, what's the destination when you're talking to somebody or when you're in conflict? Is the destination to just be right? Is the destination to just get your point across? Or is the destination to be enriched and plug into something that's bigger and more expansive? And then that bigger mind, if I can keep using that analogy,
Mm-hmm.
is a greater guarantee to our success, because it's smarter than everybody in the room when everybody's able to contribute and there's real give and take. So when you were talking about Steve Jobs and sharing that story, that's what I was thinking about.
You know what? You were talking about the third mind, and I was thinking about this because in history we're taught about Lewis and Clark and their exploration of the Louisiana Purchase and the Western Territories, right? And what people are not taught are the contributions of Native Americans and escaped slaves
Yeah.
in
Right.
helping to map that territory. What am I saying? Is that, Aaron, one of the things that I love about you is that you help me to refine my map continuously.
Likewise.
And so because my map is being refreshed by our interaction, my ability to navigate gets better,
Yeah.
right? And so the same thing with Lewis and Clark. We think about Lewis and Clark as being heroes, but they had help. They exposed themselves to the possibility of a third mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the third mind helped them to effectively map out this area, which helped the United States expand.
Yeah.
Now, you can say what you want about manifest destiny and all of that, and I'm not going to get into that.
Right.
But the point is, Lewis and Clark were never focused on the destination. They honestly didn't know how far they could or should go. They had no clue. All they knew is that they were going to press westward and northward, and whatever happened, happened.
Yeah.
And they left themselves open to possibilities, which allowed them to grow. Because the notes that Lewis Meriwether, not Lewis Meriwether, I'm trying to think of what Meriwether's first name was. But anyway, he wrote back extensively to Thomas Jefferson about his experiences and his observations. And yeah, Lewis Meriwether, because yeah, it was Meriwether and Clark. And I don't remember Clark's first name, but Lewis Meriwether. He he wrote all of these things, and he talked about the help that he had along the way.
Yeah.
And if he didn't have this, there would have been no stories, no journals, or no observations or reports to write back to the president.
Mm.
We have to remember that the journey is not a solo journey. I
Mm.
saw
Love
I
that.
saw a meme on the internet that just really almost moved me to tears.
Mm.
And you know what it said? It said, at the end, we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah, I love that. I
And
love
and
that.
and so what happens? I mean, if you think about this, like when you were a kid and you were walking home with your friends, and you think about all the conversations and all the clowning you
Yeah.
did, or
Yeah.
your first love, you're walking home, you're carrying books and all of this other stuff, and you're just excited. And you're not worried about. I mean, getting home is not the objective. It's enjoying that time,
Right.
enjoying that journey. And so I'll tell you what, man, this has been a really edifying conversation for me, and I hope that for all of you that are watching and listening, I hope that this has given you something too, that don't get so hung up on where you're going. Don't. It's good to make goals, and it's okay to fall short.
Hmm.
They say if you reach for the stars, you might land on the moon.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's like if we reach for galactic exploration, and we happen to wind up on Mars or one of Jupiter's moons or Saturn's moons, that's okay,
Yeah.
because at least we started off on that journey. and
Yeah.
and, and even though the big destination may have eluded us, you still achieved something along the way. I'm going to close with this. My friend and mentor, Jack F. Kemp.
Hmm.
Jack Kemp was an athlete. He ran track and played football, played baseball in high school and college, and went on to become a storied U.S. congressman,
Hmm.
U.S. representative from the state of New York. He was a presidential candidate, a vice presidential candidate, and Jack wanted to be the president of the United States. That was his goal. And there were so many people. They people called him the next JFK, because he was John F. Kemp.
Yeah.
Jack Kemp,
Yeah.
JFK. He was, he was handsome. He was articulate. He was charismatic. He had all of the things, and he never achieved the presidency. Now, you could easily say, well, Jack Kemp was a failure, but no. Jack Kemp helped to get Ronald Reagan elected,
Mm,
George Bush elected, numerous congressmen and senators and governors.
hmm
He was the guy who coined the term compassionate conservatism
hmm
that was co-opted by so many other Republicans.
Sure.
He was eminently a success.
Mm,
And yes, he played football. He was a quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, and we know the story of the Buffalo Bills.
yeah.
You know, he never won a Super Bowl, but you could say, well, he wasn't a successful NFL player. But how many? Fewer than 1% of the population of the United States play professional sports at any level.
Right.
I'm
Right.
talking about arena football. I'm talking about XFL. I'm not even talking about the big stage leagues. The AAA. AAA baseball. It's fewer than 1%, and
Yeah.
he played for an NFL team.
Yeah.
So he was successful. He was the thing that I want everybody to take away from this is that you might look at your life and you say, God, I failed. I didn't do the stuff that I wanted to do. But go back and look at your milestones. Go
Yeah.
back and look at the successes that you had, and then juxtapose those with your failures. And I promise you that you will see something really positive if you apply that to your life.
Love it. I got to jump out. I hate to do that to everybody. If you jumped on late, I have another obligation in a few minutes, so
Well,
that's why we were on early. Thanks again, Derrick, for being so gracious with me.
no,
Uh,
man. Thanks for even being here because I was like, shit. If you need to go, because we can. This is a thing we can do this anytime. But
yep.
I'm glad that you were here and this is a great
I
conversation.
didn't want to miss it, man. Didn't want to miss it. All right, love you guys. I gotta peace out. I gotta go.
All right, love you guys. You got to do your closing, man.
Oh yeah. So thank you for coming to our TED Talk. Thanks for all the contributions in the discussion and stuff. Sorry we don't have time to go over that more. And peace and hair grace.